When a heartless racist librarian cruelly threw a homeless young girl out of the library, she had no idea Morgan Freeman was watching from his reading room. And the legendary actor was about to make a bold move that would shake the library to its core and transform this young girl's life forever. The grey sky of early January hung heavy with winter clouds over a series of back alleys. Anna, a 12-year-old girl with brown hair and green eyes, stood alone clutching a small scrap of paper. Her thin pink sweater offered little protection against the biting cold as she compared the street name on the wall to her note, her fingers trembling both from cold and anxiety. Anna moved methodically through the lanes, checking each street sign. The late afternoon light continued to fade, casting long shadows between buildings. She found a street with the matching name but realized multiple lanes were branching off. Her frustration mounted as she checked each one, aware of time slipping away as darkness approached. "Come on," Anna muttered to herself, her breath visible in the cold air. She squinted at the fading light, trying to make out the street signs. Her heart raced with each dead end, each wrong turn. The alleyways seemed to close in around her, the brick walls growing taller and more imposing with each passing minute. Finally, after what felt like hours of searching, Anna located a black wooden door that matched her scribbled address. She saw the light was on inside the window. The surrounding brick walls loomed tall and imposing, making Anna feel even smaller. She hesitated before knocking, gathering her courage as she thought of her mother. "Mama," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "I'm going to find you, I promise." With a deep breath, Anna raised her hand and knocked on the door. Her knuckles rapped against the cold wood, the sound echoing in the empty alley. For a moment there was only silence. Then a small window in the door slid open, revealing a man's weathered face. The man's eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of the young girl standing alone in the alley. "What do you want?" he asked gruffly, his voice rough with suspicion. Anna swallowed hard, her throat dry with nervousness. "Please," she said in broken English, "is my mother here? A man gave me this address. He said I could find anything here." The shopkeeper's eyes flickered with recognition at the handwriting on her paper, though his face remained carefully neutral. He closed the small window but opened the door slightly and stepped out a few steps. "Look, young girl, I don't know where your mother is. This is my shop," he said, his voice low and measured. "You can call it my side job. I sell second-hand items for people of the street." His tone was flat as he continued, "I have anything you need, basic necessities. You can pay with whatever you have." Anna peered inside, trying to see past the man's broad shoulders. The shop's interior behind him was dimly lit, filled with miscellaneous items stacked haphazardly on shelves and tables. The smell of dust and old fabric wafted out into the alley. Anna, cold and desperate, considered her options while clutching the last of her mother's money in her pocket. The weight of the coins felt heavy, a reminder of how little she had left. But she was out of options, and the promise of warmth and potential help was too tempting to resist. "Okay," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need help." Anna mustered her courage to ask for basic necessities. "Do you have blanket and shoes?" she asked, her English halting but determined. The shopkeeper nodded curtly and moved efficiently through his crowded shop. Anna watched as he navigated the cluttered space with practiced ease, disappearing behind a towering stack of boxes, only to emerge moments later with a brown, worn blanket and a pair of oversized boots. "Here," he said, holding out the items. "These will keep you warm." Anna reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against the rough fabric of the blanket. Though dirty and used, they represented warmth and protection to her. She pulled out her mother's money, the coins clinking together as she handed them over. The transaction marked the end of her financial resources, but Anna felt a small sense of relief as she clutched the blanket to her chest. As Anna changed from her thin sandals into the two large boots, the shopkeeper observed her situation. His demeanor shifted from businessman to concerned advisor. "Listen, girl," he said, his voice softer now. "There's a public library not far from here. Big red square building down the main street. You might find shelter there for the night." Anna looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Library?" she repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. The shopkeeper nodded. Yes, library, it's getting dark and snowy soon. If you want to be safe and live another day to find your mother, you better hurry. His voice dropped lower as he continued, teaching Anna a specific phrase about public library access rights. If you get caught, just say this: the public library is open and can be freely accessed by anyone regardless of where they come from or their immigration status legally. You understand? Get those words into your brain and memorize them exactly. Anna nodded, repeating the phrase under her breath. The shopkeeper's instructions about sneaking in and staying quiet carried the weight of experience, suggesting he'd helped others before. But why? Anna asked, curiosity overcoming her shyness. Why help me? The shopkeeper's eyes clouded for a moment, as if lost in a distant memory. Because once, long ago, someone helped me when I had nothing. Sometimes that's all it takes to change a life. His words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Anna felt a lump form in her throat, touched by this unexpected kindness from a stranger. Before closing his door, the shopkeeper asked, "Have you lost your mother?" Anna's eyes welled up with tears. "Yes," she said, her voice cracking. "I lost my mother. I've been searching for her. She has brown hair and green eyes like me, dressed in twin pink sweater." The man's face softened slightly. "I haven't heard or seen any woman like that," he said. "But if you come here again after a few days, I might have some news about your mother." The comment hung in the air, neither a promise nor a dismissal, as Anna adjusted her new blanket around her shoulders. The shopkeeper reached out, patting her shoulder awkwardly but kindly. "Be careful out there, girl," he said. "The streets can be dangerous, especially for someone your age. Keep your wits about you and don't trust too easily." Anna nodded, grateful for the advice and the unexpected kindness. As she turned to leave, the shopkeeper called out one last time. "And, girl," he said, his voice gruff once more, "if you don't find what you're looking for, remember there are good people in this world. Don't lose hope." With those words, the door closed with a definitive click, leaving Anna alone once more in the deepening twilight. She stood there for a moment, the weight of her situation settling over her like the blanket on her shoulders. Then, with a deep breath, she turned and began walking towards the main street, following the shopkeeper's directions to the library. As she walked, Anna's mind raced with thoughts of her mother, the mysterious shopkeeper, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. The city around her seemed to grow larger and more intimidating with each step, but the memory of the shopkeeper's kindness gave her a small measure of comfort. The blanket wrapped around her shoulders and the sturdy boots on her feet were tangible reminders that she wasn't entirely alone in this strange, cold world. With renewed determination, Anna set off towards the main street, hoping that it would lead her to the shelter and safety she so desperately needed. Anna followed the main street as instructed, her oversized boots slowing her progress. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the empty street, punctuated by the occasional rumble of a distant car. As she walked, the cold wind bit at her face, and she pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, grateful for its warmth. The city around her was a maze of towering buildings and unfamiliar sights. Neon signs flickered to life as darkness fell, their harsh glow a stark contrast to the gentle sunsets Anna remembered from home. She tried to keep her eyes focused ahead, ignoring the curious and sometimes suspicious glances from passers-by. After what felt like an eternity of walking, the red square building emerged from the winter gloom. Its Unity Public Library sign confirmed her destination, the letters illuminated against the darkening sky. Through the tinted glass doors, she spotted a clock showing 5:45 p.m., with closing time posted as 6 p.m. at the door. Anna approached the main entrance, drawn by the warmth radiating from inside. She could see a few people moving about inside, their figures blurred by the tinted glass. For a moment she hesitated, her hand hovering near the door handle. The thought of entering a strange place filled her with anxiety, but the memory of the shopkeeper's advice and the biting cold at her back urged her forward. Instead of using the main entrance, Anna decided to circle the building's perimeter. She tested each door she came across, her heart racing with each attempt. As she rounded the back of the building, she noticed signs of staff activity. Cigarette butts scattered near an unlocked door by the garbage bins. Anna's breath caught in her throat. This was her chance. With a quick glance around to ensure no one was watching, she slipped inside, her movements quick and quiet. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and she found herself in a white corridor. The sudden warmth inside made her realize just how cold she had been. Moving cautiously, Anna followed the corridor until she reached a glass door leading into the main library. She pushed it open gently, wincing at the slight squeak of the hinges. The library interior greeted her with blessed silence. Many lights had already been switched off, creating pools of shadow between the lit areas. Anna moved through the space on tiptoes, her eyes darting around for any sign of staff or security. The library seemed deserted, the only sound the soft hum of the heating system. Though the air remained cool, it was a significant improvement over the winter streets. As she explored, Anna marveled at the rows upon rows of books. She had never seen so many in one place before. In her village, books had been precious and rare. Here they lined the walls from floor to ceiling, their spines a rainbow of colors and languages. Anna ran her fingers along the spines of the books as she passed, feeling a connection to all the stories and knowledge contained within them. She wondered what her mother would think of this place, imagining her excitement at having access to so much information. As she wandered deeper into the library, Anna came across an empty couch tucked away in a quiet corner. It looked inviting, its fabric soft and worn. With a sigh of relief, she sank onto it, her body immediately relaxing into its cushions. Exhaustion from days of searching caught up with Anna as she lay down. The couch's fabric felt luxuriously soft compared to recent nights spent on the street. Through small windows near the ceiling, she watched snowflakes beginning to fall, their gentle descent lulling her into an uneasy sleep. As her eyes drifted closed, Anna's last thoughts centered on her mother. "Mama," she whispered into the quiet library, "I hope you're safe. I hope you're warm like me." With that final thought, she slipped into sleep, the library's silence wrapping around her like a protective cocoon. Anna didn't know how long she had slept, but her peaceful slumber was shattered by the sharp sound of an angry woman's voice. "Hey, wake up! You can't sleep here!" Anna's eyes flew open, her heart pounding in her chest. A library staff member, Claire Whitman, identified by her name tag, stood over her, face twisted with disgust. Before Anna could fully process what was happening, Claire roughly pulled Anna's blanket to the floor. "Get up and leave," Claire ordered, her voice harsh and loud in the quiet library. "Homeless people don't belong in the public library. This isn't a shelter." Anna sat up, her body stiff from the awkward sleeping position. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fog of sleep from her mind. The sudden transition from peaceful sleep to this hostile awakening left her disoriented and frightened. Claire loomed over her, hands on her hips, her face a mask of anger and disgust. "Did you hear me? I said get out. We don't want your kind here." Anna's mind raced, trying to remember the words the shopkeeper had taught her. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, and her palms were sweaty with fear. Despite her grogginess and the intimidating presence of Claire, Anna took a deep breath and began to recite the memorized phrase about public access rights. "The public library," Anna started, her broken English making the words sound uncertain but determined, "is open and can be freely accessed by anyone regardless of where they come from legally." Claire's eyes widened in surprise, clearly taken aback by this knowledge of library policy. For a moment, she stood there, mouth agape, as if unsure how to respond. Well, Claire stammered, her anger momentarily derailed. She glared at Anna, then spun on her heel. "I don't want to see you again. The next time I see you, I'll make sure those same sentences won't shield you enough." She snapped over her shoulder as she stalked away, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. As Claire disappeared through a door, Anna's heart pounded in her chest. She had won this confrontation with a phrase, but fear of the woman's return prompted her to gather her belongings quickly. Her hands shook as she picked up her blanket from the floor, folding it hastily. Anna knew she needed to find a more secluded spot within the building. Moving quietly through the sections of the library, she carefully checked each area before entering. The sound of her own breathing seemed impossibly loud in the silence of the library. As she moved through the stacks, Anna's mind raced with thoughts of her mother. What would she do in this situation? How would she handle this angry woman? The memory of her mother's strength gave Anna courage, even as tears threatened to spill from her eyes. Finally, Anna stumbled upon another section of the library, one that felt more secluded than the rest. Above the entrance, a sign read, "Law Library." The dim lighting and quiet, isolated atmosphere sparked a glimmer of hope. This space felt safer, removed from the main library's bustling areas where staff might roam. She settled onto a worn couch, curling herself into a corner where she prayed she would go unnoticed. Despite her exhaustion, sleep proved more elusive now. Her mind raced with worry about both her immediate safety and her mother's whereabouts. Outside, she could hear the wind picking up, howling around the building. The sound made her shiver, thinking of her mother out there in the cold. "Mama," Anna whispered into the darkness. "Where are you? Are you safe? Are you warm?" She pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders, trying to find comfort in its warmth as she waited for morning, hoping it would bring better luck. As the hours ticked by, Anna's anxiety grew. Every sound made her jump, expecting Claire or another staff member to discover her at any moment. She tried to make herself as small as possible, huddling in the corner of the couch. The law books surrounding her seemed to watch her with silent judgment. Their thick spines and gold lettering spoke of a world of rules and regulations that Anna didn't understand. She wondered if there were laws about little girls sleeping in libraries, about children separated from their mothers. In the dimly lit law library, Anna could hear the wind howling and rattling against the glass windows, the sound amplified in the quiet space. It sounded as if the windows might shatter at any moment, and Anna felt a surge of fear. Despite her time alone on the streets, this moment, hidden in a strange building far from her mother, suddenly felt overwhelming. Anna's composure finally broke. Her quiet sobs echoed softly against the book-lined walls as she thought of her mother, wondering if she too lay somewhere cold and alone in the winter night. The sound of wind howling against the windows only intensified her feeling of isolation. She buried her face in the couch pillow, trying to muffle her cries. Memories flooded her mind, her mother's warm embrace, the sound of her laughter, the way she would sing Anna to sleep on stormy nights. The contrast between those memories and her current reality was too much to bear. Anna's body shook with silent sobs, tears soaking into the pillow. "Are you all right?" A man's voice, warm and reassuring, suddenly broke through her distress. Anna startled, quickly scanning the room until she spotted a figure standing in a doorway. Light spilled from what appeared to be a private study room behind him. Her immediate reaction was fear, another person to drive her away, and she began gathering her blanket, stammering in broken English, "I'm sorry, I'll leave, I promise." "No, no," the man said quickly, his voice gentle. "Please stay, it's okay." Anna froze, unsure what to do. The man, whom she didn't recognize as Morgan Freeman, moved slowly into the room, settling into a nearby chair with a book about social justice. His presence carried authority but also kindness, a stark contrast to Claire's hostility. "You're safe here," the man said, opening his book. "Try to get some rest." Despite her lingering wariness, his quiet reading provided an oddly comforting presence. Anna watched him for a while, her sobs gradually subsiding. The man didn't try to engage her in conversation or ask why she was there. He simply read, occasionally glancing up to give her a reassuring smile. As the minutes ticked by, Anna found herself relaxing. The rhythmic sound of pages turning and the man's calm presence began to soothe her frayed nerves. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her breathing slowly returning to normal. "Thank you," Anna whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. The man looked up from his book, his eyes kind. "You're welcome," he said softly. "Sometimes all we need is a quiet presence to remind us we're not alone." His words struck a chord in Anna's heart. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. This stranger's simple act of kindness reminded her of the shopkeeper, of the fact that there were still good people in the world. As the night wore on, Anna's exhaustion began to overtake her once more. The combination of emotional release and the man's reassuring presence lulled her back towards sleep. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she found herself struggling to stay awake. The man noticed her drowsiness. "Sleep," he said gently. "I'll be here." With those words of comfort, Anna allowed herself to drift off. As she teetered on the edge of sleep, she heard the man begin to hum softly. The melody was unfamiliar but soothing, reminding her of the lullabies her mother used to sing. As Anna slept, the man continued to read, occasionally glancing up to check on her. His presence acted as a silent guardian, keeping watch over the lost girl who had found a moment of peace in the midst of her turbulent journey. Anna's second sleep ended brutally as cold water drenched her entire body. She woke with a gasp, sputtering and disoriented. Her pink sweater, blanket and boots were now heavy with water, clinging uncomfortably to her skin. The library's bright lights had all been switched on, momentarily blinding her. As her vision cleared, Anna found Claire Whitman standing over her with an empty bucket, a security guard at her side. The man who had shown her kindness was nowhere to be seen. Anna's heart sank as she realized her brief moment of safety had vanished. Before Anna could fully orient herself, Claire launched into a vicious tirade. "I told you what happened if I saw you again," she shouted, her voice echoing in the empty library. "You filthy little vagrant." Claire's words carried increasing venom as she continued, "I'm calling the police right now. You immigrants are ruining America. You're a filth of society, wasting our resources, spoiling our land." Anna tried to stand to defend herself, but her waterlogged clothes and boots made movement difficult. She slipped and fell to the floor, prompting cruel laughter from Claire and the guard. "Look at her," Claire sneered. "Can't even stand up straight. You should have just stayed where you came from." The security guard roughly grabbed Anna's arm, shoving her shoulder and the back of her head to force her movement. The physical manhandling added humiliation to her already distressing situation. Anna felt tears welling up in her eyes, a mixture of fear and frustration overwhelming her. "Please," Anna begged, her voice trembling. "I have nowhere to go, my mother." But Claire cut her off. "I don't care about your mother or your sob story. This is America, not a charity for every immigrant who decides to sneak in." The guard tightened his grip on Anna's arm, causing her to wince in pain. "Come on, kid," he growled. "Time to go." Anna's mind raced, trying to remember the words the shopkeeper had taught her about library access rights. But in her panic and confusion, the words seemed to slip away, leaving her defenseless against Claire's onslaught. "You people come here thinking you can just take whatever you want," Claire continued, her face red with anger. "Well, not in this library, not on my watch." Anna's clothes dripped water onto the floor, creating a small puddle around her feet. She shivered, both from the cold and from fear. The library that had seemed like a sanctuary just hours ago now felt like a hostile, alien place. "Where is the man?" Anna asked, looking around desperately for the kind stranger who had watched over her. "He said I could stay." Claire laughed harshly. "There was no man here, you little liar. Just you trespassing and probably planning to steal our books." The accusation stung Anna deeply. She had never stolen anything in her life. Her mother had always taught her the importance of honesty, even in the face of hardship. The injustice of the situation overwhelmed her, and she began to cry in earnest. "Stop that sniveling," Claire snapped. "It won't work on me. I've seen your type before, always playing the victim." The security guard began to drag Anna towards the exit, her wet boots squeaking on the polished floor. Anna struggled weakly, but she was no match for the guard's strength. Just as the situation seemed darkest, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Stop this immediately!" The authoritative command came from Morgan Freeman, who had emerged from his reading room. Claire's demeanor transformed instantly. Her aggressive stance melted into fawning politeness as she recognized him. "Mr. Freeman," she exclaimed, her voice suddenly honeyed. "I didn't realize you were here. You know how much we value our exclusive guests and big donators like yourself." The guard maintained his grip on Anna, but hesitated, caught between Claire's previous orders and Freeman's intervention. Anna looked between them, confusion and hope warring on her face. In that moment of hesitation, Anna saw a chance. With a sudden burst of energy, she wrenched her arm free from the guard's grasp and ran towards Freeman, seeking protection from the only person who had shown her kindness. Freeman's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene before him. Anna, soaked and shivering, clinging to his side. Claire, her face a mask of false politeness, and the security guard, looking uncertain and uncomfortable. "Would someone care to explain what's going on here?" Freeman asked, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of anger. Claire attempted to salvage the situation, her voice switching to a honeyed tone as she addressed Freeman. "Mr. Freeman, I'm so sorry for the noise and commotion. I didn't realize you were reading late again. You see, we found this girl sleeping in our library." She gestured dismissively at Anna. "Potentially stealing books and disturbing the peace." Freeman's eyebrow raised skeptically. "Disturbing the peace? The library is empty." The guard interjected. "There are still people in the common area, sir." "In the common area," Freeman emphasized, "but not here in the law library, where it's empty and quiet." His calm demeanor hardened as he continued, "And I fail to see how a sleeping child could be disturbing anyone's peace." Claire's desperation showed as she argued, "But Mr. Freeman, you must understand. The law library section is reserved for important people, educators, lawyers, and judges. It's not a place for sleeping, and certainly not a place for the homeless." Her voice carried thinly veiled contempt as she described Anna as dirty and homeless, suggesting she might damage the valuable books. Freeman's expression darkened. "A few hours of sleep and shelter for a little girl from the snowstorm outside won't hurt the other important people's honor," he said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "And I'd argue that showing compassion is far more important than any book in this building." He turned to address Claire directly, his voice firm. "I heard your earlier comments, the racial slurs, the cruel words. Do you realize how far your voice carried? How many patrons might have heard you? As a person of color myself, I find your words deeply offensive and entirely inappropriate for someone in your position." Claire paled, realizing the extent of her misstep. "Mr. Freeman, I didn't mean—" "Save it," Freeman cut her off. He took out his phone, making an immediate call to library management. "Hello, this is Morgan Freeman. I'm at the library and I've just witnessed one of your staff members, Claire Whitman, verbally and physically abusing a child. Yes, you heard me correctly. I'm withdrawing my financial support effective immediately, unless this situation is addressed." The threat sent immediate ripples through the conversation, with management pleading for reconsideration on the other end of the line. Claire made a final attempt to justify their actions. "Mr. Freeman, please understand, this is a public library, not a housing place for them to sleep. They should go just like other people after closing hours." Freeman's eyes flashed with anger. "Is that so? Then why am I allowed to stay past closing hours? Why are there still people in the common room? It seems your rules are selectively enforced." He turned to the security guard, who had been watching the exchange with growing discomfort. "And you," Freeman said, his voice stern. "You're here to protect people, not manhandle children. I saw how roughly you were treating her. Is that how you were trained to handle minors?" The guard looked down, shame evident on his face. "No, sir," he mumbled. "I was just following orders." "Following orders is not an excuse for cruelty," Freeman replied. He turned back to Claire, who was now visibly sweating. "As for you, Ms. Whitman, I suggest you start drafting your resignation letter. I'll be speaking with the board about this incident, and I can assure you they won't be pleased." Claire's face crumpled, the reality of her actions and their consequences finally sinking in. "Please, Mr. Freeman," she begged, "I need this job. I have bills to pay, a family to support." "Perhaps you should have thought of that before you decided to abuse your position and mistreat a vulnerable child," Freeman replied, his voice cold. "Actions have consequences, Ms. Whitman. It's time you learned that lesson." He turned to Anna, his voice softening. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you somewhere warm and dry." As they walked away, leaving Claire and the guard stunned into silence, Anna felt a mix of relief and apprehension. She didn't know what would happen next, but for the moment, she felt safe under Freeman's protection. Freeman guided Anna through the library, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. As they walked, he spoke softly to her, I'm sorry you had to go through that, Anna. No child should ever be treated that way. But I want you to know that not everyone is like Claire. There are good people in this world, people who will help you." Anna nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. As they reached the library's exit, Freeman paused, looking down at the shivering girl beside him. "Now," he said gently, "let's find you some dry clothes and a warm meal. Then we can talk about how to help you find your mother." With those words, Freeman and Anna turned away, leaving behind the library and the cruelty Anna had endured. A faint glimmer of hope flickered within her as they moved through the seemingly endless maze of shelves toward the elevator. When the doors slid open and the elevator began its descent, Anna felt something she hadn't experienced since losing her mother. A fragile sense that perhaps, just perhaps, things might finally be all right. Freeman helped carry Anna's sodden blanket as they exited the elevator and made their way to the basement parking lot. The transition from the library's hostile environment to the quiet security of the parking area marked a clear shift in Anna's fortunes. A chauffeur waited with Freeman's car, ready to assist. "Sir," the chauffeur said, opening the car door. He glanced at Anna, soaked and shivering, but made no comment. His professional demeanor didn't waver, but a flicker of concern crossed his eyes as he took in the girl's bedraggled state. Freeman turned to Anna. "We need to get you into some dry clothes," he said kindly. "There's a children's clothing store not far from here. Would that be okay?" Anna nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. She climbed into the back seat of the car, the leather upholstery feeling strange against her wet clothes. As they drove, Freeman spoke quietly to his driver, instructing him to find the nearest open children's clothing store. Anna stared out the window, watching the snowy streets pass by. The warmth of the car began to seep into her bones, making her realize just how cold she had been. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions: relief at escaping the library, gratitude towards Freeman, and an ever-present worry about her mother. The city lights blurred as they drove, reminding Anna of the nights spent traveling in the caravan. She remembered pressing her face against the cool glass of the truck windows, watching unfamiliar landscapes slip by, always wondering if the next stop would be where they'd find a new home. Now in this luxurious car, she felt worlds away from that journey, yet the ache of separation from her mother was as fresh as ever. They soon pulled up in front of a brightly lit store. Freeman turned to Anna. "I'm going to send my driver in with you to help pick out some new clothes. Is that all right?" Anna nodded again, her voice barely above a whisper as she said, "Thank you." The store's bright lights and warm interior provided a stark contrast to her recent experiences. The kind-hearted shopkeeper, an older woman with a gentle smile, approached them as they entered. "Oh, you poor dear," she said, taking in Anna's bedraggled appearance. "Let's get you warmed up, shall we?" With the shopkeeper's help, Anna selected new clothes: a warm sweater, wool shawl, and properly fitting boots. The shopkeeper guided Anna to the store's restroom, where she could change out of her wet clothes. The driver passed her a laundry bag where she could put her wet clothes inside. As Anna pulled off her soaked pink sweater in the restroom, the sight of it triggered a flood of memories. She remembered the day her mother had bought the matching sweaters, how they had laughed together as they tried them on. It had been a rare moment of joy in the midst of their difficult journey. Now, as she held the wet garment in her hands, it felt like the last tangible connection to her mother. There was a soft knock on the door. "Are you okay in there, sweetie?" the shopkeeper called. Her tears flowed freely as she gazed at her reflection in the mirror, the emotional weight of her situation momentarily overwhelming her. She saw a girl she barely recognized, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, looking far older than her 12 years. For a moment she allowed herself to feel the full extent of her fear, loneliness, and grief. There was a soft knock on the door. "Are you okay in there, sweetie?" the shopkeeper called, her voice laced with concern. Anna quickly wiped her face with a paper towel, trying to compose herself. "Yes," she called back, her voice shaky. "I'm coming out now." She finished changing and carefully bundled her damp clothes into a laundry bag the chauffeur had handed her earlier. When she emerged, the shopkeeper and Freeman's driver were waiting. The clothes had been paid for, and they exited the store thanking the lady shopkeeper. As they walked back to the car, Anna clutched the laundry bag to her chest, where her wet pink sweater was securely kept. Returning to the car, Anna discovered that Freeman had arranged a warm meal for her, brought by the chauffeur from a nearby restaurant while she was changing. The thoughtful gesture filled her with gratitude, prompting her to admit, with a touch of humility, that she had no way to repay his kindness. The sight and smell of the food made Anna realize just how hungry she was. It had been days since she'd had a proper meal. The thoughtful gesture prompted Anna's gratitude and a confession that she could not repay his kindness. I have no money, she said softly, her eyes downcast. I cannot pay you back. Freeman gently waved off her concerns about repayment. There's no need for that, he said softly. Now eat up. You need to get warm and fill your belly. As Anna began to eat, savoring the first hot meal she'd had in days, Freeman spoke again. I want to help you, he said, his voice serious but kind. But I need to know your full story. Where you came from, and how you ended up in the library tonight. Can you tell me? Anna looked up from her food, meeting Freeman's eyes. She saw nothing but kindness and concern there. Slowly she nodded and began to tell her story. It started a week ago, Anna began, her voice soft and hesitant. Mama and I, we were with a group of people trying to come to America. We wore matching pink sweaters so we could find each other if we got separated. As she spoke, Anna's fingers absently traced the pattern on her new sweater, as if trying to recreate the comfort of the one she had shared with her mother. Her eyes took on a faraway look as she recounted their journey. We traveled for many days, she continued, her voice growing stronger as she immersed herself in the memories. Sometimes in trucks, sometimes walking. It was very hard. Mama, she always tried to make me feel brave. She would tell me stories at night about the better life we would have in America. Anna's voice trembled as she described the long, frightening nights hiding in the back of trucks, the constant fear of discovery, and the moment when she realized her mother was missing. Mama and I, she started, her voice soft. They separate us, different caravans. Freeman listened intently, his face a mask of concern. You were separated from your mother? He asked gently. Anna nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I stay in caravan with other children, 3 of us. Mama in other caravan behind. Her voice trembled as she continued. Sometimes we hide, under caravan floors, when told, police checks a long way. She described the terrifying moments of hiding, the fear of discovery, the discomfort of being cramped in small spaces for hours. Freeman's eyes widened at the dangers this young girl had faced. Then, Anna continued, her voice breaking, we arrive at border town, but Mama not there. The tears she had been holding back began to fall. I search everywhere, call for her, but my group, they leave without me. I've been alone ever since, trying to find her. Anna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I alone on streets. Sleep, eat there, hide, can't speak English good. She looked up at Freeman. Then man on street. He share food. Tell me about shop man who might help. She explained how the homeless man had walked with her until they neared the city, leaving her in the downtown area. I ask many people, find shop address. Her voice grew quieter. But no mama there. Only blanket, boots. Man tell me about library. As she spoke, Anna's emotions ranged from fear to hope, from sadness to determination. Her young face showed the weight of experiences far beyond her years, yet there was still a flicker of childlike hope in her eyes as she looked at Freeman. Throughout her story, Freeman listened intently, tears forming in his eyes at the young girl's ordeal. When Anna finished, silence filled the car for a moment. I just want to find my mama, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you think she's okay? Then Freeman spoke, his voice filled with determination. Anna, I'm going to help you. We're going to find your mother, or at least find out what happened to her. He pulled out his phone. I have a friend, an immigration officer. He might be able to help us. As Freeman dialed, Anna watched him, a mixture of hope and fear on her face. She had been disappointed so many times, but something about this man made her want to trust him. James, Freeman said into the phone. It's Morgan. I need your help with a sensitive situation. Can we meet? It's urgent and I need it to be discreet. He paused, listening. Thank you, my friend. We'll be there soon. Hanging up, Freeman turned to Anna. We're going to the immigration office. My friend is going to help us look for your mother. Are you ready? Anna nodded, straightening her shoulders. Yes, she said, her voice small but determined. I ready. As the car pulled away from the curb, Anna looked out at the snowy streets. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever happened next, she wasn't alone anymore in her search. The immigration office was quiet at this late hour, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow over the empty waiting room. Freeman and Anna were quickly ushered into a private room where Officer James Carter, a compassionate immigration officer, was waiting for them. Morgan, James greeted, shaking Freeman's hand before turning his attention to Anna. His eyes softened as he took in the small, tired-looking girl. And you must be Anna. I'm Officer Carter, but you can call me James. Anna nodded shyly, staying close to Freeman's side. The room felt intimidating with its stark walls and official-looking documents scattered on the desk. She couldn't help but remember the countless times she and her mother had hidden from authorities during their journey. Freeman helped Anna recount her story, translating her broken English into a clearer narrative. As Anna described her mother, brown hair, green eyes, and the matching pink sweater, James listened carefully, taking notes. His pen scratched against the paper, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. Anna, James said when she finished, did your mother ever mention any family here in the United States, any relatives you might have? Freeman helped Anna recount her story, translating her broken English into a clearer narrative. As Anna described her mother, brown hair, green eyes, and the matching pink sweater, James listened carefully, taking notes. His pen scratched against the paper, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. Anna, James said when she finished, did your mother ever mention any family here in the United States? Any relatives you might have? Anna's face scrunched up in concentration. Yes, she said slowly. Mama say, we have aunt. In Los Angeles. We go stay with her. James leaned forward, his interest piqued. Do you remember your aunt's name? Anna closed her eyes, trying to remember. The memory seemed to dance just out of reach, and for a moment she feared she had forgotten. Then suddenly it came to her. Mariah, she said finally. Mariah Flores Armenta. James nodded, jotting down the name. That's very helpful, Anna. Thank you. I'm going to go check our database now. It might take a little while. Are you okay to wait here with Mr. Freeman? Anna nodded and James left the room. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Anna and Freeman alone in the sterile office space. Freeman used this time to gently prepare Anna for various possibilities. Anna, he said softly, finding your aunt could be very good. It might help you stay here legally, but... He paused, choosing his words carefully. We don't know what we'll find out about your mother. We have to be ready for anything. Do you understand? Anna's small hands fidgeted nervously in her lap, but she nodded. I understand, she whispered. The weight of the unknown pressed heavily on her young shoulders. The minutes ticked by slowly. Anna's eyes kept darting to the door, her body tense with anticipation. Freeman placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. The clock on the wall seemed to move at an agonizingly slow pace, each tick echoing in the quiet room. Finally, after what felt like hours, the door opened, and James returned. His face was somber, and Anna's heart sank before he even spoke. She could read the bad news in his eyes, in the way his shoulders slumped slightly as he entered the room. Anna, James began, his voice gentle but serious, I have some news about your mother. He paused, taking a deep breath. I'm so sorry, but we found police records of a woman matching your mother's description. She was found near the border. It seems she may have fallen from a caravan and... He trailed off, his eyes filled with sympathy. Anna's world shattered. A wail of grief escaped her lips as the reality of James's words sank in. Freeman immediately pulled her into a comforting embrace, holding her as she sobbed uncontrollably. Mama, Anna cried, her voice muffled against Freeman's shirt. No, no, no. For several minutes, the room was filled with the sound of Anna's heartbroken cries. Freeman and James exchanged pained looks over her head, both men deeply affected by the young girl's grief. Anna's body shook with the force of her sobs, years of pent-up fear and longing pouring out in a torrent of tears. As Anna's sobs began to subside, replaced by quiet whimpers, James spoke again, his voice soft. "Anna, I know this is very hard, but I do have some good news too. We found your aunt, Mariah Flores Armenta. She's in Los Angeles, just like you remembered." Anna looked up, her face tear-stained and her eyes red. "My aunt?" she whispered, a tiny spark of hope flickering in her eyes. James nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "Yes, and I promise you, we're going to do everything we can to help you get to her. We'll expedite your immigration case." James gave her the written details of the bus she needs to board to go to Los Angeles, but before Anna could accept it, Freeman spoke up, his arm still around Anna's shoulders. "I'll take her to Los Angeles myself. My driver can make the journey." James nodded gratefully. "That would be very helpful, Morgan. I'll give you all the information you need for the trip." As they prepared to leave, James promised to keep the situation discreet while helping with Anna's immigration status. He handed Freeman a folder with necessary documents and contact information for Anna's aunt. Freeman assisted Anna out of the office and back to the car, the girl moving as if in a daze, overwhelmed by grief and exhaustion. The cold night air hit them as they stepped outside, a stark reminder of the harsh realities Anna had faced. In the car, Freeman spoke softly to Anna. "I know you're hurting right now, Anna, and it's okay to be sad. But remember, you're not alone anymore. We're going to get you to your aunt, and you're going to have a new life here. Your mother would be so proud of how brave you've been." Anna nodded silently, tears still streaming down her face. As the car pulled away from the immigration office, heading towards a future that was both uncertain and full of possibility, Anna closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw her mother's face, smiling and full of love. "I'll make you proud, Mama," she whispered. "I promise." The car drove on through the snowy night, carrying Anna towards a new chapter in her young life, one filled with both profound loss and the hope of a new beginning. As the city lights faded behind them, Anna felt a mix of emotions she couldn't quite name. Grief for her mother, fear of the unknown, but also a tiny spark of hope for what lay ahead. Freeman watched the young girl beside him, marveling at her resilience in the face of such adversity. He made a silent vow to ensure that Anna would have every opportunity for a better life, to honor the memory of the mother who had sacrificed everything for her daughter's future. As they drove towards Los Angeles and the promise of a new family, the first light of dawn began to break on the horizon. It was a new day, full of possibilities. And for Anna, the beginning of a journey that would shape the rest of her life.